Good afternoon. It's been great to be here. Thank you, Rob and Reverend Jackie and really everyone for such an amazing revolutionary weekend. So my name is Michael Jermaine Crumpler, and I am LGBTQ and Intercultural Programs Manager for the Unitarian Universalist Association. Woo! My job is to be Black and gay, serving as minister in a liberal, progressive, faith-based institution. This is my dream job. This is what I went to seminary for, almost verbatim from my essays. Basically, I get paid to be who I am, a Black and gay minister serving in a liberal, progressive, faith-based institution. Of those identities, the minister part is the easiest. And perhaps, despite the $100,000 price tag, the cheapest. But essentially, every morning, I wake up wondering, how can I make it easier for LGBTQ persons and people of color to be alive today? Most days, this involves fighting. Not necessarily against any one person or group of people or institution, but against and with myself. Negotiating, who am I going to be today as a Black and gay minister serving in a white, liberal, progressive institution? As a Black and gay minister serving in a white, liberal, progressive institution of faith, how should I spend my time today? As a Black and gay minister serving in a white, liberal, progressive institution, how much truth should I share today? As a Black and gay minister serving in a white, liberal, progressive institution, what should I wear today? Should I be respectable today? Can I be lewd today? As a Black and gay minister serving in a white, liberal, progressive institution, is my grammar correct? Is the email free of typos? As a Black and gay minister serving in a white, liberal, progressive institution, am I too loud or am I too soft? Am I too happy? Am I too angry? Is that post just too much? Or was it not clear enough? All of these internal fights center around one thing: love. Am I loved enough? Am I smart enough? Am I sexy enough? Do I have enough experience? Am I capable enough? But the main question really is, am I loved enough? As a Black and gay minister serving in a white, liberal, progressive institution, as I live and move and have my being, am I loved? Am I loved by my family? Sure. Am I loved by my friends? Certainly. Am I loved by my lover? Oh, most definitely. But there's this other experience of love that bothers me most. This love is what I refer to as existential love. Existential love is that love that begs the question, as I exist in the world, am I loved? The word existential means concerning my human existence, concerning or implying the essential existence of a thing. As I exist in the world just as I am, human, Black, gay, am I loved? I would argue that the love of family and friends and lovers is just not enough. Does my family love me infinitely? Yes, because I am family. Does my friends love me freely? Yes, because I am friendly. Does my lover love me deeply? Yes, because I am desirable. But as a Black and gay man, as I exist in the world, am I loved? I'm just going to make it easy for you today. I'm going to go ahead and cut to the chase and say no. As I exist in the world as a black and gay man, I am not loved. As a gay man, does my black family love me, my mother and aunts, brothers and sisters and cousins? Can I be as gay as I want to be around my black family? Or as a black man, can I be as black as I want to be around my white lover, my white roommate, my white landlady, my whitened Harlem, my white church, or my white employer? The degree to which I am able to answer these questions somehow impacts the degree to which I am able to answer the most important question of all: do I love myself? As I exist in the world as a black and gay man, do I love myself? Do I love my body? Do I love the sound of my voice, the movement of my thighs, the size of my lips? Do I love the color of my skin? Do I love how I make love? Somehow, the degree to which I am able to answer these most important questions is the degree to which I am able to engage prophetic resistance. For if I do not love myself, if I do not love my body, if I do not love the sound of my voice, if I do not love the movement of my thighs, if I do not love the size of my lips, if I do not love how I make love, in a world that does not love me, I will not be able to engage prophetic resistance. For prophetic resistance is empowered by the love of self. Being who I am and loving who I am is prophetic resistance. Amen? In other words, my existence is resistance. Or better said, loving my existence is prophetic resistance. Being who I am, loving who I am, living who I am as a black and gay man is resistance. Dressing how I dress, laughing how I laugh, eating how I eat, loving how I love as a black and gay man is prophetic resistance. French philosopher Albert Camus wrote, "The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your existence is an act of rebellion. Loving myself is absolute freedom, and loving my existence is absolute rebellion. As queer people of color, our existence is resistance. As homosexual and bisexual and transsexual and questioning sexual and intersexual and asexual and all sexual, our existence is resistance. As black and brown, immigrant and refugee, unloved in a world that considers our existence absurd, our existence is resistance." 3 weeks ago, while my lover and I were on vacation in St. Petersburg, Florida, we visited the Dali Museum. Apparently, if you are ever in St. Petersburg and the March wind is too high for you to soak in the sun on the Clearwater Beach, there's this amazing cultural icon that you must visit. So we did. In addition to the amazing art of the Spanish artist Salvador Dali, we happened upon the equally, if not even more amazing work of Frida Kahlo, a Mexican artist who learned to paint while bedridden. After a horrific bus accident at the age of 18, which would have been in the year 1925. Beyond my amazement of the fact that Frida survived such a horrific tragedy prior to the rise of modern medicine was the fact that the magnitude of her injuries, she endeavored to use her body and bedridden, brown, and queerness as an act of resistance. Frida's bedridden, brown, and queer body was broken by an iron rod that penetrated her pelvis and exited her back. Alejandro Gomez Arias, who was on the bus with her, describes the accident this way: The electric train with two cars approached the bus slowly. It hit the bus in the middle. Slowly, the train pushed the bus. The bus had a strange elasticity. It bent more and more. For a time, it did not break. It was a bus with long benches on either side. I remember at one moment, my knees touched the knees of the person sitting opposite me. I was sitting next to Frida. When the bus reached its maximum flexibility, it burst into 1,000 pieces, and the train kept moving. It ran over many people. I remained under the train, not Frida, but among the iron rods of the train, the handrail broke and went through Frida from one side to the other at the level of the pelvis. When I was able to stand up, I got out from under the train. I had no lesions, only contusions. Naturally, the first thing I did was look for Frida. Something strange had happened. Frida was totally nude. The collision had unfastened her clothes. Someone in the bus, probably a house painter, had been carrying a packet of powdered gold. This package broke, and the gold fell all over the bleeding body of Frida. When the people saw her, they cried, "La ballerina, la ballerina." With the gold on her red, bloody body, they thought she was a dancer. And she was. Her dancing life writhed with tragedy and pain. Frida was indeed a ballerina. For she transformed her broken and bruised, brown and queer body into a work of art as she painted her pain and her madness and her truth. Her existence was resistance as she told the truth about her heartbreak, about her miscarriages, about her infidelities, and her political activism. The Dali Museum describes the fantasy, which is the work shown on the screen, in these words. Frida merges her body into a personified landscape of heaven and earth. It is a scene of loss and sorrow. The clock, showing the 11th hour, drops copious tears under the twin volcanoes that loom over Mexico City, themselves the upturned breast of mountainous face showing distress. Instead of lava, it is milk that erupts from these forms. The wasted milk and semen are allegorical of the fruitless fertility of the world. Perhaps Frida is commenting both on her own life and that of her nation, whose rejection of the politics she embraced so passionately seemed to her a tragic loss. Frida's existence was resistance as she lay in bed, painting her feelings, her fantasies, the realities of her broken, bruised, brown, queer body. She left behind 150 beautiful works that exemplify love of self as prophetic resistance. Which begs the question, what beautiful works of prophetic resistance am I leaving behind? In an unfree world, an unfree nation, and from an unfree home state of North Carolina that does not love my beautiful black and gay body, how do I carry out prophetic resistance? The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that my very existence is an act of rebellion. The absolute freedom is love of self. Loving my black and brown body is an act of rebellion. Loving the sound of my voice is an act of rebellion. Loving the movement of my thighs is an act of rebellion. Loving the size of my lips and the color of my skin and how I make love is an act of rebellion. Loving myself is the most important political activism and movement organizing that I can engage. Loving who I am as a black and gay man in a world that does not is political resistance. My ancestors knew about this love of self as prophetic resistance as they courageously lived their lives in the face of antebellum slavery, state-sanctioned lynching, the Jim Crow South and the Jane Crow North. James Baldwin, as a black and gay patriarch, understood this love of self as prophetic resistance as he penned these words in his epic work, The Fire Next Time. These Negro boys and girls who are facing mobs today come out of a long line of improbable aristocrats, the only genuine aristocrats this country has ever known. I say this country because their frame of reference is totally American. They were hewing out of the mountain of white supremacy the stone of their individuality. I have great respect for the unsung army of black men and women who trudged down back lanes and entered back doors saying yes, sir, and no, ma'am, in order to acquire a new roof for the schoolhouse, new books, a new chemistry lab, more beds for dormitories, more dormitories. They did not like saying yes, sir, and no, ma'am, but the country was in no hurry to educate Negroes. These black men and women knew that the job had to be done, and they put their pride in their pockets in order to do it. It is very hard to believe that they were in any way inferior to the white men and women who opened those back doors. It is very hard to believe that those men and women raising their children, eating their greens, crying their curses, weeping their tears, singing their songs, making their love as the sun rose, as the sun set, were in any way inferior to the white men and women who crept over to share those splendors after the sun went down. But we must avoid the European error. We must not suppose that because the situation, the ways, the perceptions of black people so radically different from those of whites, that they are radically superior. I am proud of these people, not because of the color, but because of their intelligence and their spiritual force and their beauty. The country should be proud of them too, for alas, not many people in this country even know of their existence. And the reason for this ignorance is that a knowledge of the role of these people play in American life would reveal more about America than Americans care to know. Loving our beautiful black and brown, broken and bruised bodies is indeed prophetic resistance.
My spirit's telling me. Let's say that.
My spirit's telling me.
I gotta be free.
I gotta be free.
My spirit's telling me.
My spirit's telling me.
I gotta be free.
I gotta be free.
My spirit is telling me.
My spirit is telling me.
I got to be free.
I got to be free.
Put yourself in it a little bit, will you, lovers? My spirit, what? What my spirit is saying?
My
Spirit is telling me.
Yeah, what? What did
I gotta be free.
Oh, yeah, tell me a little bit more.
Spirit is telling me.
I gotta be free. One more time.
My spirit is telling me.
I gotta be free. Oh, one more big one.
My spirit is telling me.
I gotta be free. Love you, family. This is what we're talking about. This is the time we're going to choose our freedom right here. We're going to start with a moment of meeting each other. So open your arms up like really. Did anybody have that little statue that said, I love you this much? Did you have that one? Okay, so you didn't have that one? You have it now. I love you this much. Now get your hug on over here. Hug it out. Hug it out with each other. Hug it out. Hug it out. Hug it out. Hug it out, lover. Hug it out. I love you this much. No, I love you this much. How much? This much. My spirit is telling me, baby, it's time to be free. Time to experience freedom and happiness. I love you this much. Now you're all part of the love project. You all want to be part of the love project? Where we're all powered by love at Middle? Now you're all part of the love project. These are fun, right? I never get lost. I was lost and now I'm found. So check it out. You're going to buddy up with someone. Let's be an example, darling. Okay? So stand on your left foot. Oh, no. Yeah. You were going to bring our trees. Actually, stand on your right foot and bring your left foot up. And we're going to practice tree pose. And we're going to bring our hands together into a prayer and see how we can explore balancing, finding our middle. Find your middle, find your center. Breathe in. Are you knocking each other over? Take your arms up. My spirit is telling me.
My spirit is telling me.
I gotta be free.
I gotta be free.
One more big breath in. And as you step away, step your foot to the side wide. Bring your finger on top of the center of your head and spin around. And you can change your mind any day. Every day is change your mind day. Have a seat, family. Have a seat. Have a seat, family. So check it in, check it in, check it in. Don't check it out, check it in. Check it in. So I was a big party girl, big surprise. And now I love to party at Middle, and I love to party the way Middle likes to party. And one thing that I noticed early on when I came to Middle is there was singing, there was dancing, the preacher herself was rapping. This one was dancing in the aisles. We were praying, we were praising, we were worshiping, we were uplifting each other. That we become a spiritual forklift for each other. That I change through you. That I meet me through you. That through each other we transform. That if I in the other video, the cat was saying he could have just gone home. It took an effort to make his way out. But we know if we come here, something bigger happens. Something that is even beyond explanation goes on here. There's an energy, a palpable, powerful energy when we come together in the spirit of community, okay? It's one of the definitions of yoga, which is to come together. So when I opened this joint called the Church of Yoga in New Orleans, people said, church? You mean I give up my other church to come to your church of yoga? They kind of got offended. A white lady buys a black Baptist church. I didn't see in black and white. I missed that one coming. I said, why do you go to church? To be uplifted, to join each other, to plug into spirit, to feel like there's something greater that we can connect with. Maybe you come for the singing or the clapping. So these are all the things that I wanted to share with you today. So we did some spoken word. My spirit is telling me I gotta be free. So I include in my practice, in my self-care practice, all the things that turn me on, or that I want. Even Einstein said creativity is more important than knowledge, right? So I want to live a creative life. How do I live a creative life? Creative life is one that you create. Like it doesn't exist tomorrow because we're not there yet. So we create it today. So some of the things I include in that are singing, dancing, moving, loving, definitely laughing. So I wanted to sing a little bit, and because if I were to sing solo, I might be a little, I might have that little self-conscious shuffle. You know when you have that self-conscious shuffle and you kind of go back or you go deep into the dance floor? I decided I wanted to go deep into the dance floor. Do you want to go to the deep end of the dance floor, family? Cool. So I even have friends that started yoga and they're like, I used to sing, but then somebody said something about my voice and I stopped singing, and they're singing again. Or I was a dancer, but then I had a couple kids and I stopped dancing, and they're dancing again. So this is the invitation when you plug in this way and you're powered by love, Middle. Powered by love, middle. To start to awaken in you the memory of maybe of what you forgot. And remind you of that which you have that you want to awaken. So I remember years ago reading a story and the person was depressed and despondent and went to like a shaman. It could have been like a local shaman right here. You could have gone to Jackie, right? And they're like, I'm depressed, I'm down. Who else has a little bit of depression or anxiety or just would like to be a little bit more up, right? Joy, like just bring the joy that you want. You know, like you want more joy in your life, you're gonna have to bring it, by the way. And the first thing that the shaman said is, why did you stop dancing? Why did you stop singing? Why did you stop, or when? When did you stop dancing? Like, when did you stop being enchanted by stories and silence? And so these are the parts of ourselves that like, we all shine. We don't have to outshine each other. We all shine. And you fulfill that part of yourself that wants to sing or dance or be a better listener or be a better friend, right? Okay, so here we go. This is a harmonium. Say it, harmonium. Harmonium. It's like harmoniousness. Don't you want more harmony in your life? Calm is the new crazy, babes. Calm is the new crazy. Calm is the new crazy. Yeah, that's what I want, baby. So I love to pray. I love to pray together. Praying in my apartment's cute and all, but then I miss your faces. You know, I miss your beautiful face and eyes. The church is great, but the best thing about church is all of you. So we'll do we call it call and response. I pray for you. I pray for you. Pray for me. Let me get it. I pray for you. You pray for me. I pray for you. You pray for me. I feel like we got it now. Shall we do that together? I pray for you. You pray for me. I pray for you. You pray for me. This is how it is. It's like a game of spiritual game of tag. I pray for you. I pray for you. Pray for me. I pray for you. You pray for me. All together, a few times. I pray for you. Look at each other. Come on. You pray for me. I pray for you. You pray for me. One more time. Somebody else. I pray for you. You pray for me. David, I pray for you. You pray for me. Come on, arms up. You open your arms, you open your heart. That's just the deal. You pray for me. I pray for you. You pray for me. One more time. Sing to your lover and they'll come. I pray for you. You pray for me. I pray for you. You pray for Amen. Let the Spirit find you. Amen. You're a soul, you have a body. Amen. Amen. I can't hear you. Amen. Amen. Make it yours. Sing like yourself. Amen. Amen. One more time from your heart. One more time. Amen. Kumbaya moment. Let your hands touch. We got to do that. Your hands are up. Get them up in the air. And amen. Hey. You can move your hips. That's very powerful. Swaying. Amen. Hey. And you thought we were separate? Please. One more. Amen. You thought we were different, huh? Black and white, I don't know what you're talking about. Amen. Hey, last time, it really is the last time. Just go for it. Amen. 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 Put your hands together. Celebrate. That's the applause. That's your life. Have a seat, lovers. We're all spiritual lovers. Sing it, baby. Amen. 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 Where's my tambourine? Amen. You got to give it away to keep it. All of a sudden I heard amen and hallelujah. We got up on your feet. You got to stand for what you believe in, family. You got to stand for what you believe in. So, even the papers started flying. I remembered sometimes Jackie will come up here and go, well, I lost my sermon. I was like, whoo, and I've lost a few teeth, honey. So check it in. The greatest thing about meeting yourself is through the journey of each other. Dancing, praying, listening, being enchanted by stories. Today we just practiced a singing meditation. Sometimes it's quieter or more still. Sometimes the way you feel spirit is you have to reach for it, right? Who's the cat that, you have to go halfway, like inspiration, right? You have to go halfway to meet it. You got to be willing to take that next right step. So I want to close with a prayer. Some of the other things I love to include. See, in yoga, it's called Kundalini. Say that word, Kundalini. Doesn't it make you want to move a little bit? Right? So the practice of yoga means to join together, to bring together, to unite, to yoke. Some of you probably heard that, right? But we sometimes think of it only as the asanas or the postures. But actually this union is U-N-I-T-Y. It's a unity, right? Is this coming together, is dissolving this feeling of separateness. And so when we can return to our source through music, through dancing, through the spirit of gathering, something mysterious happens. And it's called stepping into magic. Stepping into magic. This is from Ruth Forman. The name of the book is Renaissance. Poetry. Because on my own, my language especially in the summer when I'm outside playing. In the winter, my language is better because I'm reading more poetry. We need as many things. We need things to uplift us, right? On our own, the mind is like, just goes into the pits, right? Like they say, your own head is like a bad neighborhood, right? You shouldn't go in there alone. And so we have to make choices, powerful choices that are uplifting, right? Listen to the song and let it tell you how. Be quiet, be quiet, be still. Let the angels put their hands on where it hurts and smooth. Be quiet, be still. Ask for prayers around you and bathe in song. Sit in children's laughter twice a day. Leave your thoughts for another time. Wrap yourself in daylight. Knit yourself a friend tighter than you imagined. Let good people close to you move away from those that suck from you. Be safe. Be quiet. Be still. If you have no hands, write. If you have no feet, dance. If you have no voice, sing, and a chorus will carry you. And the community will carry you. If you have no eyes, see, and if you have no arms, hug. Be thankful, be quiet, be still. And the pouring come upon you like holy water, and the healing a new plant. Break the ground, emerge clean and willing, sorry and thankful, new and quiet, rejoice like children at kickball. Wise like grandmothers on the stoop, ready to live and whole, ready and whole. Ruth Forman, get yourself the book. This is the practice of wholeness. We feel separate. It's at the root of our suffering. How do we experience wholeness? It's healing. It comes from the word meaning to heal. This is some big medicine at Middle. We're powered by love. You come here, you plug in. You take that creativity when you see the dance here and the arts here and this feeling of feeling really alive, not just living, but like alive. And then what comes when you feel alive? Grateful. You're grateful. You want what you have instead of wanting what everybody else has. You want what you have. Gratitude arises. Set up a daily practice for you that speaks to your passions and your creativity. Set it up and it will arise, family. Thank you for letting me be of service today. I've loved every moment with you. My spirit is telling me. Namaste, everybody. Namaste. The light in me loves the light in you.
To the ancestors, named and unnamed, who've come before me, to the playground prophets at my back, For all of these things and more, Creator, I give you praise. Dear Marshawn, I've never met you, but ever since I learned a little bit more about your story last year, you've not escaped my mind. You see, like you, I grew up in flyover country, a Black child, the place where thistles and dandelions seep through the cracks of abandoned factories and broken promises. My ancestors migrated here, fleeing the daily terrorism of life in the agrarian South, where Black bodies were seen as chattel, and the cry of baby Shugs, holy, we flesh, we flesh, we flesh, was met with deaf ears who refused to hear. So our peoples boarded buses and trains and cars, following the North Star to what they hoped was a better life. What they found were urban ghettos and the same horrors of racism sung to a different tune. Your peoples landed in Ohio, mine in Illinois. Your friends say you wanted something for the world that the world was not quite ready for, peace and unity. You were fond of saying that you needed a pistol that shoots hope so you could light the hood up. And light it up you did with art and poetry and song and activism. You founded Pursuing the Dream in 2013 to feed the unhoused, not out of a sense of charity or altruism or some messianic complex, but because you knew firsthand what it was like to not know where you were going to sleep that night. You see, when Mike Brown was crucified on an altar of pavement laid bare for the world to see, the brutality inflicted on Black bodies and brown bodies and queer bodies, you answered the call. Alongside your brothers and sisters and siblings in the Ohio Student Association, you organized for justice for Mike and John Crawford and Tamir Rice, a baby assassinated for the crime of playing on a playground. You see, everyone was so blinded by your brightness and the brightness of your star, they could not clearly see the darkness that surrounded you. No one does. They saw the awards, the hometown hero, the red carpets, and the resume, but they did not see you. They could not see the heaviness you were carrying, the weight of death placed on your back. You said on Facebook that day that your demons got the best of you. So you placed steel to temple flesh and pulled, finally free from the pain that enveloped you. Your lifeless body remained on the steps of the Ohio State House, crucified. Testament. Your spirit was finally free from a specific pain that I will never know. I am writing this eulogy for you so that you know even now you're not alone. I too have felt the constant companion of depression. Last year, around the time you died, my mother went into the hospital for the last time. I had the honor of journeying alongside her as she took her final walk towards death after a 14-year battle with cancer. But before we knew where the path was leading, before the word hospice had entered our vocabulary, when we thought her hospital visit was just a temporary one, we had time. One day, as we were waiting for the doctor to come around, she told me a story. Gazing out the window, she recalled that time, that moment when in quiet despair, she placed her foot on the accelerator and began to drive down a boat launch ramp into the murky, mud-tinged waters of the Mississippi River. You see, the Mississippi has seen its share of Black death, people striving for freedom. And you told me, Mama, that the voices of the ancestors surrounded you and asked who would take care of your baby. You chose to live for me. It was a sentiment I recognized because at 14 years old, I chose to live for you. When the blade was at my wrist and I thought I could not go on, I thought my mommy would be sad. My mommy would be sad. Marshawn, you are not alone. For heaven is full of angels, angels that I know, who left this world in similar ways as you did. Josephine Chow, Nina Fouché, Matthew Coppell, I say your names. If angels do indeed have wings, I pray they wrap them around you and give you the sense of peace and unity you've never found here. Love, a sister still trying to find herself. Marshawn McCarroll was 23 years old when he died on the steps of the Ohio State House. You see, there's a refrain in the field of mental health that suicide is a permanent fix to a temporary problem. But what happens when the problems that Black and brown bodies like mine, people who exist at the margins, are not faced with temporary problems, but structural problems? That don't go away. You see, in my life, I've found that trauma is real, that it exists throughout the generations, the same way that my mama taught me to be a strong Black woman. She taught me what self-sacrifice looked like to the detriment of her own health. So when we talk about what it means to love the self, how do you love the self when society tells you that you are despised? That blade on my wrist at 14 was the same blade that so many of my friends have picked up. Black bodies, brown bodies, queer bodies, Muslim bodies, seeking a way out. Mama Audre Lorde was right when she said that caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation and an act of political warfare. You see, this very same trauma that many of us live with is political, and thus our healing must be political as well. The elders of the generative somatics movement teach us that trauma lives in our bodies. It is something that we carry with us each and every day. And so the question I have for you, beloved, as we think about this radical, countercultural work of loving the self is how? I believe that first we have to remember the fullness of our stories, not just as a moment of recall, but as a literal remembering, putting back together the full picture of who we are. We are taught to forget. We are a culture that lives in a state of grief that is taught to forget and move on, but each of us carries within us, yes, great joy, but also deep pain. And that pain can be a resource as well. But we cannot begin the radical work of loving the self if we don't know who that self is. if we have not given ourselves enough time, place, consideration to look in the mirror and say, I see you. I love you. I see you. Second, just as our trauma is political, is the stuff for me of 400 years of history, of a stolen people brought to this land, so too must our healing be, like Mama Audra said, a political act. It must be countercultural, even within our movement spaces. I'm a church girl, y'all. I'm a church girl, y'all. And in my tradition, there's only one Messiah. The Messianic complex that we have endowed, the martyrdom complex that we have embedded within our social movements, is the reason why we're dying. The political act, indeed the countercultural act, is to not put oneself up on the mantle for public display, no. It is to be engaged in a collective act of healing, a collective act of care, a collective act knowing that if I need to step back, beloved, someone else will step forward. And that is the work of not just self-care, but communal care. It is within communities, and only within communities, that we will begin to see ourselves as God has called us to be. I believe what it says in the book of Genesis, that we are all created with a divine spark. And so how can I know me? How can I know the divine? How can I know God without knowing you? That is the work of communal care. That is why the work must never be done alone. Far too often, our mantras of self-love or its cousin self-care becomes about pedicures and manicures, and listen, I am down for all of those things. But who has access to those things? Our care cannot be tied to our ability to pay, cannot be reproduced in a capitalistic cycle that marginalizes many of our bodies and exploits our labor. Finally, beloved, the work, the radical work, the political work of love, of self, is a journey and not a destination. It is a process that we, from time to time, will revisit, whether we're a playground prophet or an elder saint. It is a lifetime of work. It is a lifetime of work. In the book of Mark, Jesus says, there are 2 commandments that I give you. First, to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And second, to love your neighbor as yourself. If we don't know how to love ourselves, we won't be able to love our neighbor. If we don't love our neighbor, this work of revolutionary love will stay stagnant. And there are too many Marchands in the world in need of radical healing. There are too many Marchands in the world in need of a vision of the future. But I do believe we can do it together. Thank you. My life experience has shown me, through the example of many women that I love, and Black women in particular I love, that this notion of loving oneself is viewed as, in many cases, as a liability rather than an asset, right? That I've been writing a lot about my mom's death, and one of the things that people kept saying about her after she passed was she was so strong. She was so strong. She fought a good fight. She was a soldier. She fought, and she fought for you. She fought for your dad. And in my quiet moments, I wonder if she could have had peace sooner, if she wasn't always fighting for someone else. And so I wonder, this notion, particularly in the society in which we exist, which is very highly individualistic, that my own lived experience has been maybe the opposite of that true womanhood, true Black womanhood is about being able to, what you give to your community versus what you give to yourself. And that is a teaching that I am desperate to untangle, to dismantle. And I say this with the beloved heart of my church, right? Like, I love the church. I told y'all I'm a church girl. I love the church. But I've also seen the way in which the church in particular has perpetuated that cycle by building itself on women's labor, and particularly the Black church and Black women's labor, without the recognition of leadership. I'm lucky to be a part of a denomination that's been ordaining women for a long time, because I'm like, this is recorded, bishop. We've been ordaining women for a long time, but that doesn't mean that women's labor doesn't get exploited and continue to perpetuate the same cycle of giving of rather than being poured into. And I think that's why my peoples die sooner. I think that's why Black women die of heart disease sooner. And so the question I'm always carrying is, that framework doesn't ring true for me or in the lives of the people I love, in that the radical act of love of self is actually a pivot point. And a pivot point when done in community, because I don't think I'm not talking about like self-obsession but to be able to see oneself in the mirror as an object that is despised by the world and say, I love you and I see you, feels like radical work to me and feels like the work of this moment. I think movement spaces are calling for something different, and we need it desperately.
Awesome. Lovers, Oprah was not built in a day. And you still see Oprah on the cover of a magazine. How I'm finally now accepting myself. What is it now, where I can finally accept myself? There's a beautiful line from Hafez, a beautiful poet. Hafez means memorizer, and he memorized the Quran. But he has a beautiful book of poems called The Gift. And he says, I wish I could show you, when you are lonely or in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being. And the teachings of yoga tell us that there is a light that never goes out. No matter how dark it gets, if there's a light that never goes out. If we had one candle and every other light was out, we would still see that light. And so it's a gradual process of awakening. Like, feel like I know so many things about so many things, like some new app or something, but I know so little about myself. And so through the practices, through the body-mind practices, I'm sharing from my own experience, strength, and hope. They're sharing from theirs. Yoga turned my life around. I have a background of addiction and destructive behavior. When you're in a cycle of addiction, it's very painful, and there's a lot of self-loathing. So when you begin to change that behavior, already you feel better about who you are. And if, let's say, there's certain shapes you can't do in yoga, like you can't touch your toes. You keep practicing something, right? Another name for magic is repetition. You do something over and over again. Another description, another way to express yoga, saying that the impossible becomes possible. The unseen becomes knowable. And so there's things that you couldn't do, and then then you're able to practice them. And so that brings a lot of confidence. I didn't have a lot of confidence growing up. I grew up in an alcoholic family, and it was very confusing. Nobody was talking about anything. It was confusing. So I went and adopted another family. They didn't adopt me, I adopted them. I went and hung out where it's warm. I went where it was warm. The grandmother lived in the back of the house. Her name was Sudi. She was the grandmother in French, and she always had the tin of cookies in the back. You know, like the Danish blue tin. But she kept changing what was in them. And I knew that I could go to Sudi and she'd be sweet and she'd give me sweetness. And, you know, why do we want something sweet? We want to remember the sweetness of life. And then sometimes maybe we overdo the sweet, whatever. You know, being human is divine. But step by step and with a longing, right? The longing for love is love. It brings you closer. The longing to discover who you are, or get closer to that exploration or that investigation, or really become like a soul scientist. Like, who am I, right? The ancient yogis and mystics would actually ask the question. The jnana yogis would say, the more you would ask, who am I, the more you realize who you're not. I'm not my hairdo. I ain't my cell phone. I'm certainly not my teeny tiny apartment in New York City. I am that which is beyond explanation. I am that I am. I am that I am. It's like it's beyond, it's the mystery. We're not trying to solve the mystery who we are. We're trying to experience more truly the mystery that we are. And so we touch blessings. So we begin to touch what's infinite. We begin to touch what's eternal. Our thoughts limit who we are. We have a limited sense of who we are. We begin to experience what's unlimited, ourselves as infinite, ourselves as boundless. That's why we work with not just the mind, we're working with the body, because the body is the path to wholeness. Ready and whole, ready and whole. That's why we enter, the body is how we experience spirit. It's how we reunite and explore our spiritual purpose. We move closer to why we're here and who we are from the direct experience of who we are. From that experience, that's where faith comes from. Right? What blocks our faith or what blocks our joy is kind of the obvious. Fear, anger, anxiety blocks our joy. It blocks our essence. Shame. I grew up with a lot of shame. Anyone felt like they had shame? Apparently some people don't have shame. I was like, who are your parents? Introduce me. My parents didn't intend for me to experience shame. I had a lot of shame about who I was. I thought I was going to be found out. I don't know what you're going to find out. But they're going to find out who my father was, that he was an alcoholic, you know, that my mother was didn't know what to do with that and took it out on the kids. And we were at a loss to talk to anybody. That you keep these things a secret. And it's like now much more open that we all deal with addiction. I'm in New Orleans. There's a lot of destructive behavior. I mean, there's drinking all over the streets. People go there to drink on the streets. They think it's really magnificent to have just this drinking everywhere. There's a street called Bourbon Street, right? And so you're going to do what you're going to do until you don't do it anymore, right? I knew I'm not my successes. I'm not my failures. You're not your successes. You're not your failures. You're something much greater, right? And so we identify with this limited sense of self, and we are limitless. And so the breath as the source, even in Swahili, the word breath is spirit, is soul. This is how you plug in. We plug in through each other. The body is another entry point. What did you do? You stood up on your feet. You clapped your hands. You waved your arms. Something something beautiful, something deep, something ecstatic. I mean, I want ecstasy. I want to go from zero to God. And like, of course, I want to go there fast.
So someone asked a question.
I want God, you know?
You want to respond to that before
Please
we
go
have
ahead.
David go?
Yeah, I was to that point. I think that like what confuses me the most about love the neighbor as you love yourself is this, I just don't have enough to like give to someone else and me at the same time. Like I want a lot of stuff, and and the way I love myself is expensive.
Well,
And so, like, if I gotta love someone else as I would love myself, I would, that requires a lot. So I have to like weigh what I value. And I think in a society where capitalism and commodification is king, it becomes difficult to understand how that happens. So then I have to go back to my roots and remember where I lived and where I came from, and that we had nothing, and in that having nothing, I had everything. Before I realized, like, all of these wants and needs that I have today existed. It was, where was I raised, and how many of us slept on the floor, and when we didn't have a bathroom, and when there was just a few pieces of chicken in the freezer, and those kinds of things, that was the ethic out of which I was best able to love my neighbor as I would love myself. So that's why I say that this going back to who you really are and the essential of where we came from, where I came from, and where I learned to live in an impoverished community in southeastern North Carolina, I'm able to then remember how to do that. So it's just a matter of worth and value. But if I think in today's terms of what I want and what I need, and then when I try to think of someone else and what they want and what they need, then all of a sudden it becomes too expensive.
I'm almost afraid to speak because I think that what you've created here is just so precious, and I'm so thankful. It feels like this afternoon has really been about art, and the witness of body and of life has just been very rich. And I just wanted to say, as the first of 6 kids, the best thing of that was on Saturday night when we put the tub in the kitchen and took baths before church on Sunday. I get to go first, so I didn't have to use used water. I was formed as an adult, a political and spiritual and thoughtful adult, working in a working class Marxist-Leninist theater comedy group. And one of the things, it was so easy for us doing our work to imagine that we all were giving ourselves for the cause. And one of the most restorative things for me was when a dear colleague in the core group said, if you're going to really be working class, you have to get your emotions under control. And he said, the first thing you have to know is you better be enraged. Because everything that you've done is denigrated in this society, right? Every piece of story says it's intellectual labor over manual labor. Every piece of story has talked about how filthy it is for working people to do the goddamn work that there is to do this, and that working people are always pushed down. And you better get your rage there, be in touch with it, and know what it's about. And on the other side...
I have one.
Yes.
Yeah, good question.
Thank you, I'm so sorry. And the other side is that you had better be proud, because nothing exists in this world that a worker didn't do. And so to have the collegial relationship where people can call each other to be fully in touch with all of their emotions, their story, and whatever. Anyway, I think that that's the great gift. And for me, that's what religious community is about. I found it in theater. But I think that what you're helping us do is to do exactly that. Sorry I spoke so long. Love you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll go to the next question, and you can hold on to that one as well.
So I'm, on the one hand, appreciating how, especially for marginalized people, people of color, how love of self is a revolution. But then I'm also kind of butting up against that. So as a Chinese woman, you know, the culture I'm in is one that's inherently very communitarian. So I don't know that I necessarily feel as much of this like pull inherently toward like care of self, and that if anything, once I'm in this kind of Western self-helpish kind of culture, not that that's what you're espousing, but that kind of self-care almost kind of pathologizes the culture that I'm rooted in, right? Mm-hmm. So what does it look like then to care for yourself without kind of losing yourself in a sort of culture of self-care that's really oppositional to how I grew up?
So my first response to that, because I feel you, right? The balance between the community, that's why I talk about communal care versus self-care, because I think it's kind of a radical reorienting of how we think about doing this work. It requires deep communities of accountability, right? So when I think about the community that helps me think about how I love myself as an extension of how I then love my community, those are the people who know me at my roots. I call them my core crew. Like literally, they're at my core. And they're also the folks that if I get too self-focused, that are gonna be like, girl, and give me that look, right? And so I think what feels really important to me as we begin to explore this work as radical work, particularly for communities of color, that doing so in community, and doing so not only in community, but with this deep sense of accountability, right? To the collective liberation of all, not just the collective liberation of self, feels really important. So I would say, you know, it's easier said than done, and requires like also my friends humble me, right? Like the ability to be humble and be humbled by people. I mean, I also get this from my 85-year-old grandmother. She will humble me, even as she's telling me to go sit down someplace, which is her way of saying, go take care of yourself. So I would offer that up.
I think that for me, the West is oppressive. It's in opposition to non-whiteness. So as I speak about being black and gay and affirming that in myself and fighting for that by living it out in beauty, it's just owning that, and I so how that works in other cultural contexts is complicated because of the history of blackness in this country. So I think that there is something unique about the black experience in America that needs to continue to be named and privileged, primarily because of the history of how black people are situated in the West. And so I not to diminish the Chinese experience or any other experience, but I think that when it comes to, I think that the West is a problem of whiteness. And so I believe that, that the answer is somehow rooted in the identities that have been marginalized by imperialism and capitalism. So.
Here we go.
I just wanted to know if this is a question, if self-love can mean in a moment you have to love somebody else, like the woman who talked out on a school shooter. Like, can self-love in a moment be where you have to let somebody else know you love them? Like,
Self-love is definitely going to be your understanding of self-love, and it's going to change as you change. Look at some of the relationships you had early on in your life, and you're like, how could I be with that person? Or what was I thinking? But you can only attract somebody as available as you are, right? So as you become more available, your expression or understanding or relationship with love of self will shift as you're shifting. And this is the essence of transformation, or like even the way the lotus comes from the mud, it comes from the muck, it comes from like the ground, but the most beautiful flower comes out of it, right? Like that's the story of each one of our transformation. Everything that we've gone through has given us substance and has brought us here. So if we can be inspired through each other, by each other, if we hear from somebody and they say, I started doing a meditation class and my mind is even louder than ever, or I feel like I want to have a spiritual practice or create my spiritual world, so that the reason that we do that is because there's always going to be something going on in your life that's difficult, that's demanding, that maybe even be like watching the loss of your mother or other things like you're saying in the world that continue to be really, really difficult. The climate, the political climate, how can you in the midst of that be free? How can you in the midst of this day-to-day life, your daily event, you're the main production, aren't you? How can you carve out some time to explore more peace in your life? Be more grounded, stay connected to your roots, be of service, right? Love is really, love for God is through service. The best way, somebody used the word pity pot, the best way to get off the pity pot is to do service, to be of service, to get involved. Bhakti, the word in yoga, bhakti yoga means to participate. When you're really participating, I've watched it happen here at Middle. With the ushers, they get involved, they're being of service. There's a deep sense of fulfillment. Mm-hmm. Your life is meaningful, right? You know, Joseph Campbell asked the question, what's the meaning of life? What do you think? What's the meaning of life? You have an answer, anybody?
I don't want to say the Calvinist one.
And who knows? Well, he says he's tempting us and interested, saying, life has no meaning. You give it meaning. You give it meaning. You give life meaning. Life is interesting. Your life is interesting when you're interested in it. When you're interested in each other. Right? Sometimes you feel like, oh, life's not interesting, or why am I here? That's when you've got this call. You got the call to come to Middle, or the call to awaken, or to be of service. Maybe stay longer after church, or find out about the homeless program, or giving out food. Get involved. I think that's the greatest way to love the self, is to feel like you're a part of something bigger, to really participate. This communal thing is that in the spirit of togetherness, we transform. We begin to fall in love with love. And our life is lifted, and the way we see ourselves and the way we see each other and see ourselves in the world shifts. And those shifts that take place are the beginning of a lifelong love affair. It's called the romance with yourself.
All right, we have time for one more question. Do you have a response? You want to go? Okay, we have one more question. Adaria, thank you.
So I'm a deacon here, and this self-love as a revolution is really something that's important to me. And the resonance of communal care and self-care is this both and thinking, I think is really critical. So I think my question is more of a tactics question. Because I hear the theory and I hear the intention, but like, how do we now manifest this? I love the church of yoga. I love the idea of praying and yoga. You all in the middle know this, right? Like, I love the idea of bringing different things together to have a full experience, and it will also sustain and fuel you. So I feel like we've had lots of conversations about this in movement building, and now how do we get there? If Joe's around, do we do this thing where we continually check in with each other about how's your base? Mm-hmm. Do we do this thing where we check in about whether you should be stepping up or stepping back? How do we actually now manifest the care continuum so we can keep going? Because we need the strength for the journey. Like, what do we do now? So it's a doing question.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in circles, and I want to say to the previous question really quickly, yes, I think that the act of saving one's life as an act of service, as an extension of self, can absolutely be a form of self-love, right? As long as it is nourishing both to community and to you, right? And so, to your question though, I love circles. Like, I'm a really big proponent of circles, like circles of people who are together and coming together to check in with one another, to check on roots. At Faith Matters Network, I'm shouting out Mickey, who's in the audience, who runs our Healing Justice initiatives. We do a lot of this circle-based work, right? And so it's a community of maybe 8 to 10 people who are circling up around common identity, around something. You can choose the way. What the commitment is one, I'm going to check in with you. 2, we're going to have a common language for talking about it when we talk about self-care. So I think about our work. We do an initiative in Nashville called Hush Harbors, which is for Black women who are in prophetic ministries, right? And that work, we center the text of bell hooks, right, as a common language for us to begin exploring. And particularly, it's called, I'm looking at Mickey, bell hooks, the book we're using, Sisters of the Yam, yes, Black women in self-recovery, right? And so I think, a couple of ways to answer your question is, one, circles are really helpful. So having a continual circle that is an accountability circle that can do common shared ritual life together is really important to me when I think about this balance of self-love and communal love. 2, having a common language for how we're talking about and developing it. And 3, getting in our bodies is something that's really important. So we do these embodied resilience seminars. We've done everything from burlesque with like 60-year-old women getting down, right? Black women getting down to poetry and arts. So we really think that the embodiedness is both an act of artistic creativity and imagination and a way to get back in touch with a body that otherwise has been told to be shameful, right? And it's about recovering. Like Bell Hooks talks about recovering darkness for Black women, but like, what does it mean for us to begin redeeming that space? So circles, I'm a big believer of circles.
So real quick, do you have, Dana or Michael, you have a response to that, and then we'll close out so we can find some spirits in the social hall as well as here.
I'll just add that, I think there's a lot to do and a lot going on. I think it's finding that thing that fits the gifts and the abilities and the spirit that you bring to it. Everything's not for everybody, and sometimes you can leave a circle, and realize that it's not where you are supposed to be, but the places where you are supposed to be to contribute authentically, to show up, tell the truth, not be ashamed, and be who you are over and over again, so that it becomes safe and brave for you and everyone in that space. So sometimes there's a lot to do. There's a lot of ways to engage the movement. I like to think that everywhere I am nowadays is involved in the movement if I show up and say, this is offensive, this is wrong, this is hurtful, that's not how you do it, this is what I need, what do you need? Over and over again wherever I'm at. So.
Yeah.
Dana, do you have a word before we wrap up, or?
Yeah, a word. A word? That was it.
Yep.
Start where you are. Every breath is a new beginning. Every breath is a second chance. And it's so personal. What turns you on or what turns you on. Take a step in that direction, right? If you think I'm going to sit and meditate for an hour, or going to go to that yoga class, or pick up African dance again, take a step in the direction that you want to go. It's taking a walk, or having that coffee date with a friend, or lingering at the church. Take a step in the direction that brings you closer to God, that brings you closer to who you really are. Not who you think you are, but who you really are. Love itself.
Let's give a lot of love to this panel of revolutionary lovers.